Oh, we can hear each other. Hey, it's Ryan Spelt, and welcome back to a very special episode of One Man's Journey podcast. We're live today, and Raymond came to me yesterday and asked me, do you want to just go live? And I had to think about it, and I was like, yeah, let's do something different today. So it's a special Wednesday on March 20th, and man, I'm super excited to have you on. I appreciate everything that you kind of put out there. And if you don't know Raymond, he is the founder of Be Better Academy. Man, you've got so much to list, but you run a podcast. You said you've launched like 45 companies and had some success there and some failures there. And I mean, you just got so much, it's pretty difficult to even put it into words for you. So I'm just going to kind of pass it over to you and just let you roll with your story and see what we can pull out for some things to talk about afterwards. So thanks for being here, Raymond.
I love it. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me back, man. I appreciate it. Guys, for everybody watching, my name's Raymond Sjolseth, founder of Be Better Academy. I run a coaching program, podcasts, write some books, and focus in the real estate industry. Ryan, you asked me something before we went live, and you said, you're just going to kind of hand it over and ask me to tell my story. And the first thing that popped up in my mind was, which story? The one that I lived or the one that I'm creating? And I think that we forget about that, right? As people, is that we are the author of our lives if we decide to take ownership, but it is a conscious decision. So I would like to actually put it back in your lap for a minute. Where did One Man's Journey podcast come from?
Great question. And I'm working on one that's coming out on Monday because Monday's my birthday. So I'm going to do my first ever solo episode on Monday. So there will be some of the stuff that's going to drop in there. But yeah, it really came from a drive to have a network of people that are understanding that we as men don't really have a circle to be in, or we feel the pressure and we feel like we don't have a circle to be in. So the drive is to, really bring awareness around the fact that like you are not alone, right? Like the little video at the start begins, like you're not alone in this life, even though all that pressure is there and you feel like you got to hide your emotions and hide where things came from. You got to be the tough guy. Like all of that came out into One Man's Journey. And really the spark for it was I've been involved in a couple of coaching programs for a considerable amount of time in the mortgage industry. And really they've grown to a place where the one-on-one contact or the interaction of the coaching kind of had gone away a little bit, or the community piece of it, where it's so big now that it just ends up being a go there, get information to get more loans kind of thing, instead of focusing on the person behind the loans. And so this is kind of my plight into that direction, as well as to kind of bring that a little bit and kind of create some connection.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. And I ask for a reason. I think that, I know a little bit about you. I know a little bit about the history. I know a little bit about where this came from. But you brought up a good point, is that we grow up in this environment where we're programmed and we are not taught to think about what we want or where we want to go or what our future may look like or what our future self may look like. We are taught to suppress, for the most part, suppress our emotions, suppress our feelings, suppress our thoughts, not necessarily share or speak our mind, right? In my household, I heard children are to be seen and not heard. Like that was a common, very, very common phrase in my household growing up. And I grew up in a household full of trauma. And that forced me to compartmentalize so much. And for the first time, I'll be 50 this year in October. And for the first time, I feel like the freest version of myself, that I'm able to feel, I'm able to process, I'm able to understand why I react certain ways and where that goes. And honestly, it's helped me make so much better decisions compared to me being reactionary. Even though I try to be responsive, I still found myself being reactionary, right? So when I talk about my story My story was one of survival. My story was one of enoughness issues, meaning that there wasn't enough. I didn't feel good enough. I didn't think I was good enough. Um, there wasn't enough money. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough food. There wasn't enough supply. There wasn't enough, right? So I thought I had worked through a lot of those issues until COVID hit. And I got smashed and crushed, lost a massive company. And all these enoughness issues came pouring back. And that one little word has really guided my journey over the last 4 years as I've been pivoting and rebuilding and starting over, deciding that I'm enough and that I want to be surrounded by other people who are enough, who feel like they're enough. And that if I meet people along my journey, I have the ability to contribute to help them realize that they're enough as they are, who they are, where they are. And once they accept that and make that decision, they can grow into the best version of themselves. But until that happens, you're always behind. Right. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that, feeling like they're always behind versus just starting from where they are and realize that this is zero. Anything above that is positive. It's addition. You're stacking the odds in your favor. Does that make sense?
You mentioned the COVID thing, that you got crushed during COVID, which happened a lot, right? But with us being in the real estate industry, we can point to everyone being crushed after, right? Like we've got a whole new generation. Like we went through the businesses being affected by the pandemic, and we saw major upswings, and some people upgraded their lives, some people upgraded their expenses, some people didn't save a dollar, some people didn't go buy assets. Like they didn't set themselves up for afterwards. And now we're seeing that come through in the industry, nationwide, with less than half of agents closing one or less deals for a year.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's exactly where you're saying the enough piece there of it flooding back to you, man. I had those same feelings. I had those same feelings in January of this year, because I went through a situation where I was like, I had one loan and nothing after, like I had no prospects afterwards, right? And I went and it was really a nice place of growth, of noticing the growth, because I was able to go, but I'm good enough to go get more. And now I've got, 4 million in the pipeline in less than 30 days of actually starting the action. But it was releasing that first.
Ryan, can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah.
I think there's this space when you're there. Like I'm literally there right now. A massive project that I was working on just kind of went away. I'm not going to get into it, but just kind of went away. And now it's like, okay, I need to pivot. I need to adapt. I need to adjust, and I need to start over. And I have other things in the pipeline that now is actually, I've kind of been given this gift where I had these 3 buckets I was juggling. 2 of the buckets went away for various reasons. And now I just have this one bucket, and I'm super focused on this one bucket. But there's this gap in that space where there's anxiety, there's like a lack of belief, this feeling of not enough, this holy crap, what's next, right? Or what do I do right now? And it's this pause. And sometimes there's nothing to do. You literally just have to have patience and wait. But how did you, A, did you experience that? And B, how did you handle that?
Yeah, so this is a cycle that I've gone through. I'm not going through it anymore, but this is a cycle that I've gone through in where, it's really not just me in particular. So this is not a special story in any way, shape, or form, right? It's the traditional roller coaster of real estate or mortgage, where you get busy and then you crash and then you got nothing. I just never really ramped back up after the insanity of 20 and 21. And like I became a taker instead of a go out and either a go out and getter or a giver, right? Because I became somebody that was just like, okay, it's coming in, and then somebody shut the faucet off, and it's not coming in. And I waited a whole year, and probably a little longer than a year, to go, I got to do something. Like I got to figure out what direction this goes in. And really, it's not even about coming up with something new. It just ends up being like, you've already set the assets up. You've already set the direction. Just dive in and submit to it and let it happen. And so that's where that thought process was for me, was just like recognizing, like, I'm good enough to go get this. Why am I not going to get it? Like, why am I sitting here waiting for something to happen when I can actually just go make it happen?
Yeah, 100%. You know that you can stack the odds in your favor if you just take action and do the work.
And most of the time you've already done that work. Like, for outwardly for other people, you've already established that, because you wouldn't have had the success in the beginning, right? Like the success, it may come super fast and super easy, but there was a reason that it came. It wasn't because you were doing nothing.
Sure.
And a lot of the people in the industry, they go, well, oh, it turned off. I'm like, there's still people out there doing 100 deals a year. Why are you only getting 2? Like, and if I think we've talked about this before too, where it's like, if you think you're the best person for the job, why aren't you out there screaming that from the mountaintop? Like, you can't tell me you're the best and then you close 2 deals because you're afraid to get on camera or afraid to get out, like you know what actions you have to take. Just start taking the action. That's really like the direction that it needs to go.
Yeah. Inside my program, our first step on the roadmap that I have is be seen and get found. That's your number one job. If you can't be seen and get found, there's nothing to discuss. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's the simplification of it to a point of like, okay, I just take this one action and then I do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do it again. Mm-hmm. And you just keep going. How did you, because I know that you've had these scenarios too. How did you shift that mindset? Because, as we talked about on the Reconnect podcast that I had you on, you talked about having multiple businesses and kind of, you called them, failures. I wouldn't call them failures. I'd call them learning experiences, obviously, but I wasn't also involved.
Building blocks. Yeah, they were building blocks.
Yeah. How do you make that switch from that, that inevitable fall down to how do I get back up and move? Like, how did you make that switch?
I think a lot of that honestly just comes from growing up in an environment where I had to survive. So I am by all means the guy who builds the plane after jumping off the cliff, right? Or builds the parachute after I jump off the cliff. So there's always been this innate drive to like be better. And like, that's where it comes from. Like the name of everything I do under my umbrella is be better, build better, with the premise of to build anything better, you have to be better. It's an inside job, number one. So once you decide to take responsibility and you take action, you just have to do it. Like you said, and again, and again, and again. And it's this iteration over and over and over again. For me, I was never afraid of falling. So I knew I would get up and keep going. The difference is like, now I have 5 kids and 3 dogs, and there's a lot more distractions in my life than there was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So it's different stresses, right? It's different necessities to build around, but it's honestly been a gift because it pushed me, going into COVID, I thought like I was the master of my attention and time, right? I thought I knew how to really manage time. But then when you have 5 kids at home getting homeschooled, one of which is special needs and all her services went away, then your income goes to 0 or below 0, right? And you have to rebuild. You lose a massive contract, literally 8 figures. And you're in this place of like, holy crap, what am I going to do next? And I realized, okay, it's the 80-20 rule, right? I need 20% input, 80% output. Because now instead of having 50, 60 hours a week, I have 15 to 20 hours a week if I'm lucky. And how do I get these results with this input? And it forced me to think differently, to work differently, to be more resourceful, to look at creating momentum differently of what progress actually looks like for those results. So going back to what we were just talking about, that like pause, that moment, like in between things happening, it taught me to appreciate that more and to let that be. Like, stop trying to force it. Instead, use it as runway, use it as white space to think and plan your next 1, 3, 5 moves. Even though they're probably not going to go according to plan, at least you have those action items to take. Right? So
yeah, I think there's a lot of people that just take the next move, right? Like we talked about the action piece, but the action piece has to have that setup space of like, you have to have a direction. Like if you're just taking action, you're just grabbing things, right? Like you're running from one side of the road to the other and then back and then back and then back, instead of just running straight down the road. Because you're just like, ooh, the shiny object. Ooh, the shiny object. You start like, you literally try to grab anything that's going to help you. But if you have a goal in mind and actually that's all you're focusing on, that little white space you're talking about gives you that time to go, okay, here's step 1 and step 2. I'll figure the rest out later. But like staying in that focus. how do you focus like that? Because I know that you have that ability. How do you stay like dead focused on what you're looking at?
It's a conscious decision, and it's not easy to do. So often what I'll do is I'll literally grab a sheet of paper and I'll draw a circle and I'll write my name, and it's the hub and spoke theory, right? So what do I need to do next that requires me? And I don't want to be the bottleneck to anything in my network, in my family, in my own way. And I'll start drawing these legs, if you will, from this hub and spoke model and say, okay, what needs my attention right now? Like, what is my next step today? Right. So I had a coaching session this morning. I had a call cancel in between you and I. That gave me some white space. I have our call, and then I have 2 more calls this afternoon, and then I'll go get kids from school and do the family thing and yada, yada, yada. But that hour between us, I had free. So I said, okay, what can I do now to knock out of the way? Right. So I sent a handful of text messages, returned a bunch of DMs, sent some emails I had planned on sending later, and I just did it now. So the focus is I work in boxes, right? Like I have 3 buckets in my life. Okay. I have fitness, family, and finance. Fitness is physical fitness, emotional, mental health, and personal development. Family is wife, kids, relationships, friends, that kind of stuff. Finance is everything I do to make an impact. Work, real estate, coaching, podcasts, whatever, right? So my calendar is broken down into those buckets. So if something in one of those buckets goes away, I can either choose something from another bucket or think, right? Like, what can I do to move forward faster? And what does that actually look like? It could be inspired action is what I would call it, right? Like picking up the phone to somebody you haven't talked to in a while, or thinking about leveraging something that maybe didn't hit me before, but in that moment of space, it gave me a minute to get clarity. And I see people with calendars that are like back to back to back to back. And while I appreciate that, I can't work like that. Like I have intentionally built more white space in my calendars to like give me a minute to catch up so I don't always feel like I'm running behind. And that's allowed me to focus.
Yeah, we're talking about the adding or the chasing, and I made the analogy of the crossing the road thing, and I think that that's a huge thing. If we're talking about that white space, the white space then becomes time to breathe, or like you said, time to think, or any of that. And we have this overscheduled day, and then when something falls out, we don't take time. We just fill the time by doing this with our phone, instead of like allowing it to be ourselves. And I think you and I have even talked about this in the past, where it's not necessarily about what you need to add to be successful, right? Like, how do you eliminate something to make yourself more successful?
Yeah. So that's, for me, that's what I call the Sunday diet, right? So Sundays before the week, I look at my calendar and I say, okay, these are all my meetings I have scheduled over the next 5 days. What meeting do I not need to attend? Right? Can I eliminate it? Can I delegate it? Or is it not relevant at all anymore? And on average, going through that, I'll buy myself 3 to 5 hours back a week. Right? Then I can choose where those 3 to 5 hours go. Do they need to go to lead gen? Do they need to go to administrative? Do they need to go to content? Right? Videos, podcasts, writing, newsletters, whatever. So that I'm investing in my future self. And like, that's the way that I look at it, is what can I do today to invest in the future me that helps drive me the direction of progress towards what I'm trying to build and where I'm trying to go.
And arguably you probably get more done, because like you said, with that, the 2080 that you developed through COVID, where you only had 20% of the time. So you got to put out all that input or that output. Developing that over time, if you're minimizing the time you actually allow yourself to do something, you're still going to get it done, and you'll have more time after, because you're going to, you expand your problems to the size of the time that you schedule for them. Right.
Well, yeah, it's the desk theory, man. Right. Like the bigger the desk you have, the more crap you're going to pile on it. The smaller the desk you have, you can only have so much real estate. So if you understand that space, you will be forced to learn, to adapt, and get better. And whatever doesn't get done is probably not important, right? Maybe it's urgent, but it's not necessarily important. So for me, like I have 3 important goals in 2024, and I have 3 important things a month to contribute to those goals. Then I have 3 important things a week, 3 important things a day. So every night before I go to bed, I open my Notion app, right, where I built out my own personal dashboard, my second brain, and boom, these are the 3 things I'm going to tackle tomorrow. And those are the important things. I'm still going to pick up the kids from school. I'm still going to go to the grocery store. I'm still going to make dinner. I'm still going to go to soccer. Like that stuff is urgent, right? But I can do 3 important things that move my business forward in like on average 2 to 3 hours a day, right? A lot of people are wasting time all the time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And again, that word enough, that's part of what caused me to rethink input and output. And what does it actually look like? Right? So what are the 3 things that I can do today to drive progress in my business that actually matter? Is it 1 hour of lead gen? Is it 1 hour of follow up and outreach? Is it a 1 hour meeting with somebody?
And knowing the outcome you want, obviously, then allows you to filter those through what's most important.
Yeah. And I think it was, I don't remember if it was Oprah or somebody else that basically said, you know, if you don't know the outcome of a meeting, you shouldn't be having it. And I have found that to be very, very true, because there's a lot of people that want to take my time and your time, right? Is it worth it? Well, I believe in investing in my future self and investing in people and investing in relationships, right? So sometimes there doesn't need to be an outcome, but you need to know where you're doing it, right? Because time can't be managed. The only thing that we can control is our attention, because our attention consumes that time. So there's lots of meetings that I don't need to have or I don't need to attend that are irrelevant. I know people that would love just to back on Zooms all day, and they'll jump on any Zoom that'll have them. No, thank you. I don't want it. Like I'm trying to uncomplicate my schedule, not fill it. It's the opposite, right? Like I have one goal, man. Complete time freedom. In order to have complete time freedom, I need financial freedom. In order to have financial freedom, I need to make sure I'm working and creating the right moves to move my business towards creating that for me, right? I don't want obligations except to my family and my kids at the end of the day and the relationships that are important to me, right? So what is an elimination diet that you can go on? And in my 5-day challenges, this is one thing that I give people. In our workbook, we have a elimination sheet, and I ask them to run for 30 days. Okay. It's a digital PDF, or you can print it out, whatever you want to do. What can you eliminate every day? Right? One thing. Maybe it's eating sugar. Maybe it's wasting time and getting a 20-minute workout in, or a 20-minute walk, or a 5-minute walk, right? Like if you go for 30 days and you just write down one thing that you can eliminate, your life and your time will look different after 30 days. Right? So how can you put that into practice? And it forces you to really decide, do I need to do this? Yes or no? Is this important? Yes or no? Because everything that you're saying yes to, you're saying no to something else. And everything you're saying no to, you're saying yes to something else. Right? So where do your yeses need to go to move your business forward? Right? In the real estate business, buying and selling homes or working with investors or mortgages, you need leads. Right? The most important thing you can do is nurture and build relationships so you have clients to talk to that can know you, like you, trust you, refer you, all that kind of good stuff. So where is your time going? And what does that actually look like? Today, my life is different than 4 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, right? Mondays, I will literally batch lead generation for 4 to 5 hours, and then I'm done for the week. Then it's on autopilot. Calendly links, emails, text messages, email sequences, and my calendar just fills up in the weeks ahead. And now I run like 3 to 4 weeks ahead on my calendar. I know exactly what's happening, which gives me the runway to decide, do I need this meeting or not? Am I still going that direction? Like this week, it's only Wednesday, but on Sunday, I canceled 3 meetings before the week even got started because they weren't important.
Yeah, it's and obviously it's trust of what you believe to be important. I really think it really comes down to trust of yourself and your intuition, because if we're constant, like you mentioned, the person that's out there, like, let me go take every meeting. That person thinks they are very busy and they think they're being very productive, and they end up living the same damn year over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
Because they were in meetings all day. So it must've been a good day. And they don't trust themselves enough to go, I probably don't need to take that one. So the development of the trust and actually listening to yourself and trusting that you can make a good decision in that regard is probably where a lot of that difficulty comes in for people of needing that overscheduled piece. How do you listen and better to your intuition, or how have you tuned into that? Do you have any like techniques around doing that?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this in two ways. Number one is one of the things I did is I took my lowest common denominator. How many hours do I actually have in a day to be productive? Okay. For me, it's 9 to 3. Right. So I wake up at 4:30, 4:30 to 5:30 is my time. 5:30 to 8:30 is family time. Lunches, breakfast, kids to school, household chores, dogs, whatever. 8:30 to 9, driving back to my office. 9 o'clock, boom, I'm ready to go. Doesn't mean I'm not returning emails, messages, phone calls while I'm driving, whatever, but 9 to 3 is my uninterrupted time. That's the time I can be in front of the computer working, doing what I have to do. So that's when calls are booked. That's when coaching sessions are had. That's when podcasts are done. That's when newsletters are written. And I know that 6 hours, 5 days a week is manageable. So all of my important stuff has to be done in that time. All the other time that I have available on weekends, early in the mornings, while making dinner, that stuff is filler. That's support, right? That's when I can return DMs. That's when I can return text messages, return emails, make a few, focused phone calls with my team or whatever needs to happen. So that's number one, is like knowing that bottleneck. If you understand that you're going to allocate this much time for you to do your work, do your job, and you commit to that and you decide that this is what you have, you start to make different decisions about what you're going to say yes to and where your time's going to go. 6 hours a day of focused work is a lot. Most people working 50, 60, 80-hour weeks are not doing that. Like they're not
2 hours a day
getting the results. Yeah. Right. So I plan for 6 hours knowing it's the 80-20. I'm going to be 80% effective. And I'm good with that. Right. Because I'll keep raising the bar over time to get better and better and better as I iterate, as I figure out how I make better decisions, how I figure out what's important to me. But so to directly answer your question of like, how do I get in that mindset or what that space is? It's being able to evaluate your priority, because most people are not prioritizing ourselves. That's one of the reasons, like, I hate email, dude. I am uninterested in email. It's everybody else's priorities usually. But in this business, like, that's how we communicate, via email, right? DocuSign, Dotloop, sharing projects, sharing information, like whatever it may be, internal and external. So allocating space for you, deciding that, hey, this is what my workday is going to look like. And then these are my buckets. And then do they fit in the bucket or not? Do they fit in the lead gen bucket? Do they fit in setting an appointment bucket? Do they fit in managing my CRM and organizing and communicating with people bucket? Do they fit in the meeting bucket? Zoom, in-person, conversation, whatever. And then content. Am I making content? Am I being a creator to attract the client that I want into my world? Right? And if you understand these things and you allocate that space, you're going to make different decisions. And when you make different decisions, you're going to show up for yourself. Because most of us are not showing up for ourselves. We're showing up for somebody else because we feel obligated to.
And showing up for somebody else was when you said the client that you want. Mm-hmm. What strategy did you take to develop the concept of the client that you want? I know a lot of people refer to them as the avatar of your client, right? Like who is that? How did you develop that? And I'm sure there's multiple ways, but how do you recognize when people are not that?
Yeah. So a few things on that. Avatar. I think a lot of people are scared of that word. So I stopped using it. And I also think it's overused at the end of the day, right? Like we're people. People do business with people. And that's what creates the business. So let's focus on the people that we want to attract or the people that we want to be surrounded by. Yesterday on a coaching session with my group, I got 3 people all at separate times that gave me the best compliment that I could ever have for writing my newsletter, which was in 3 different ways. They all said, we feel like you're speaking to us, like you're writing to us. And I use that as a lesson for content creation. Okay. If you put on a different lens and you start thinking about writing to the client that you want to talk to, shooting video to the client that you want to talk to, creating a podcast to the person that you want to reach, influence, help, impact, give a gift to, that changes the lens of what you're actually going to put out. Most people are not, right? Most people are just creating a piece of content and then putting it out there with zero intention of, oh, I just need to create content, right? Or keeping current matters or something to get out there.
Right.
Like, what's the intention behind your content? Like, look, man, you have this podcast, you know what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to help and give and impact men primarily on this journey for yourself and let them know, hey, you're not alone. I'm over here. What kind of support do you need? Right? So with that in mind, knowing that lens, you're already putting yourself in the shoes of the person that you want to attract into your world to make an impact. So if you are a real estate agent and you want to work with buyers, you need to look at that and say, what content do I need to create that buyers are going to be interested in? Home tours, community tours, neighborhood tours, amenity tours in and around the community, right? If you're in a city that's very walkable, you're going to highlight how close everything is to A, B, and C communities that have homes that are 3+2s in the 500K range, great for first-time buyers or new families, right? You need to take the time to dial some of that in to know who you're speaking to, right? Like, my coaching primarily is for real estate professionals, not just agents. Loan officers, title people, home inspectors, home appraisers, it's all the same. My framework's all the same because it's from all of these businesses that have both, I've learned from and succeeded, saying, here's the commonalities in what has worked and what hasn't. And then I built it into these frameworks, which I use today as roadmaps for everybody that comes into my world. So it's no different than the client you want to attract, right? So for you as a lender, if you want agents that are doing 750K to 1.5K deals all day long, you need to figure out what are the 3 things that I need to talk about that's going to attract those people, right? Like, what are their pain points? What are their challenges? Where can I add value? Like, I call those toolboxes. Everybody needs to build their toolboxes, right? So if you're an electrician, you have a specialty toolbox to do electrical work. If you're a drywall person, you have a specialty toolbox to do drywall and make sure your tape's smooth and sanded and all that kind of good stuff. If you're a plumber, you have a toolbox. The thing is, all those trades have hammers, pliers, screwdrivers. Of course, we all have some of the same tools, but the more specific you get inside of your toolbox, the more value you can offer. The more value you can offer, the more you have the ability to keep the conversation going, which is what we're all trying to do. That's all follow-up is how do I keep the conversation going?
And that entry point that you're saying there, like where you're specifically picking out who you want to talk to, that develops that whole piece. And a lot of agents will be like, oh, I know I'm the best for it, but I can't get him in the door. And it's like, then your messaging isn't lining up with the right people, or it's just not even going out at all, right? That's a whole nother issue if you're not even creating the content. But, I often get that. And, now being in a recruiting role, I'm also getting like, oh, I just need the topics to talk about. I'm like, then you don't know your client. You don't even know what you want in a business, because ultimately we want to work on things we're good at, right? It's the theory of Ikigai. We want to be good at them, get paid for them, and have happiness all around it. And you don't even know that. So why do you expect your client to come, or clients to be drawn to you, if you don't even know what you want in your business? Just start talking about what you want to talk about. And then that client goes, oh, that's important to me. And then they reach out. So that even as simple as that, in the messaging behind your content, just start talking. Like, that's what this is. That's what this entire concept of this podcast is. I created something because I wanted it. Like I literally sat there and I was like trying to find groups to get into. And I just went, why the hell am I not just creating this? Like I've got like 2,800 friends on Facebook at that point. I've got a group of, at that point it's like 350 to 500 real estate agents and just people that I connected with. I'm like, I know a bunch of dudes. Like, why don't I just do this and like start asking people? And here we are. But that's the answer. Just start creating the content for what you like and what you think is important for a buyer to know, or for whatever your target audience is. And it eventually turns around and goes, man, you really know your stuff. Like, yeah, because I'm talking about what I know, not what what somebody told me to talk about.
Yeah. And, everybody thinks that there's a silver bullet for lead generation, and there's not. You're only doing three things. You're having conversation, you're fostering connection, and at some point you're going to have conversion. That conversion can mean a lot of things. It can mean a transaction. It can be a loan that went through. It could be a referral. It could be them subscribing to your email newsletter. However you want to categorize it, doesn't matter. But if you're not having conversations and you're not building connection, it's never going to happen. Right? Like every morning I go to a Starbucks and I get my wife her favorite drink. Sometimes I get a coffee. I'm more of a Dunkin' fan. But they all know me there. Right? Ray, wife's order? Yep. Kid stuff today? Nope. Okay, cool. Boom. That's it. I go. Like I have a relationship because I keep showing up. Right now it's a transaction. I'm paying for coffee and I'm leaving. But I walk in there all the time with the kids and I get free cake pops or an extra drink or a special drink or, bigger size, whatever it may be as part of it. But I'm asking these people questions. Hey, Jen, how are you? What's going on? What time did you get up this morning? Did everybody show up to work today? Right? Because everyone's flaky in those cases a lot of times. And making those investments matter, but you have to begin with the end in mind. And most people are just creating content because somebody told them to create content. There's no intention behind it. Like, what is the intention? Who do you want to talk to? Right? And I used this analogy on a coaching call this morning. I said, look, if you go to a football stadium and you have two teams playing, but there's nobody in the audience, who's watching the game? Right? Maybe the players play, but then it's just practice. They're not inspired. There's no pressure. There's no hype. There's no reason to perform. Right? So when you give yourself a reason to perform, which is a stadium full of people rooting for you or against you, doesn't matter depending upon which team you're rooting for, then the game changes. So if you want clients rooting for you, if you want clients coming to you, if you want to attract buyers, sellers, investors, whoever it is, your content has to resonate with them. Right?
That fostering connection for sure is the biggest piece. And again, mainly most of this is coming from just talking with other loan officers and just paying attention in some of the Facebook groups of like, where are you guys getting your leads? Where are the leads coming from? It's like, it doesn't matter where my leads come from because you are not me. And I'll tell you exactly what you want to know. I'm going to do a video in about an hour and I'm going to go, here's what I do. Here's how I do it. And this is what happens. And 1.5 people is going to go, hey, can you send me the link to that? And then nobody's going to do the work. Like, it's just the way it is, right? Because you're not me. I'm passionate about this shit. Like, this is what I do. Like, I enjoy the podcasting piece because now I've got content for a week out of one 45-minute session because I've taken the time to learn the background pieces that you and I both use now, and it's able, like, I can tell you and I can teach you and I can show you everything, but you have to want it. And ultimately bringing that, that whole thing we just talked about creating the client you want to work with. Selfishly, my life is considerably better. And I know yours is too, because you only work with people you really want to work with. The people that you're not wanting to work with are generally not coming into your circle to work with you because your words don't resonate with them. And so you're not having to have these internal battles with your clients that you're coaching, because the clients that you're coaching want you to teach them. They're stepping into that role because they want to be taught and you want to be the teacher, and it's a perfect symbiotic relationship. You don't have the other piece of having to fight through all the other stuff because they're going to listen to you because that's what they're there for. But you created that. They didn't create that. And I think if we can get to a point of just an understanding of, as an industry, you can literally create your own clientele. So if you're going to your other agents and you're complaining about this crappy client that you have that doesn't listen to anything you say, you created that relationship, whether you recognize it or not.
Yeah. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but look at this NAR thing, right? Everyone's reacting to this NAR thing and everyone has an opinion, some right, some wrong, some don't matter. But if everyone would actually put the amount of time that they've put into this NAR and sharing their opinion or decision into lead generation for their own business, they would not have a lead problem.
And I'd argue that most people don't have a lead problem, but it's that relationship piece that you mentioned. They're assuming because someone contacted them, they're going to work with them.
Yeah, 100%.
So their close percentage goes 1 in 20.
Yeah.
If you get 20 leads as a real estate agent or a lender, and you can't find a way to close 5 or 6 of those deals, and then those 5 or 6 turn into 3 to 5 each, so now you've got another 30. Like now you've got 50 leads out of the original 20.
Yep.
But if you're not building the relationships and you're not connecting, and you think that any client and every client is your client, then when they go and close with another real estate agent, you're going to post on Facebook like, oh, had another client that I went and toured 8 homes with. And, you know, this NAR thing to, you know, we could like you said, we could go into this thing for 45 minutes on its own, and we may end up doing that. But, you know, ultimately, like the agents that are jumping, like saying it's bad for buyers. Is it? Now they get to choose what price they want to pay for a real estate agent. Like you don't get to advertise that you're free anymore because you never were. And that's upsetting to you because now you have to negotiate your own price and you have to run a business as a business, right? And it's creates that thought of like, God, if you just create the clientele you want, and it's not easy to close, but that's why the money is what the money is, because none of these deals are easy to close.
No,
you've got to make that connection.
Yeah, and it's quality. And that was something when I first got into this side of the business on the coaching side, it was quantity, right? Like, how do I get to all these people? But what's changed for me over the last year specifically is quality. Now it's the quality of person that I'm attracting, that's coming into my world, that I'm also saying yes to, that now it's a little bit more of an interview process because, look, I want to get people results because I want 5-star reviews, right? In order to get 5-star reviews, I need people to show up and do the work. So who wants to do the work? And there's a massive difference between somebody who wants to do the work and who doesn't. I can tell on the first conversation, right? What's their mindset, growth or fixed, right? Are they an opportunist or victim? Do they feel entitled or not? Do they realize they have to work for things, right? Is it the brokerage's fault, or are they taking responsibility as a business owner, knowing that the brokerage is just a tool? Some better than the others, 100%. But the brokerage is just a tool. That's it. It's a vehicle, right? You can drive a Mercedes, you can drive a Volkswagen, you can drive a Hyundai. It doesn't really matter.
And arguably, it's not even a vehicle. It's a garage.
Yeah, 100%. You're
because
right.
You're the vehicle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like no matter where you go, and this is really coming up now. And that's why I was like passionate of a response to that, because like right now in the recruiting industry, or just where we're at, like loan officers are struggling. And they're not getting help from their leadership in any way, shape, or form. And maybe that is the problem, right? They got a garage that the door is shut and they can't get out because the leadership didn't give them the push button to open the garage door, right? Or even give them the key to the car. They're just sitting in the car staring at the wall. And they often are just like, well, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? Do you really use 25 tools throughout your day? Because I'll take you to facebook.com and show you how you add 20 realtors a day and you can start creating conversations around those for free. Why do you need a $150 tool per month? Why do you need a $300 a month tool? And if you really want it, do it my way for 45 days. You'll close 3 deals and now you can afford it and pay for it yourself. Like, we don't need all of this extra crap. And it's really gotten that way. And, I think in the industry, especially mortgage, we were in that expansion phase. We were in that huge, everybody's making money hand over fist, and we can provide all of these different things for people. And then everybody went, well, I need better rates. Well, you want all this, and then you want lower, like there's a give and take here. So let's balance it out. Let's give better rates, and you can keep more of it, and you can pay for those individual things if you want them. And, you know, like you said, that it's not about the brokerage. It's about the action and the ability for you as a human, as a person, to get out there and connect with people.
Yeah, I think there's two things on all of that, Ryan. I think there's just a lack of leadership in general within the industry. Two, and people aren't resourceful, right? Like if you're going to be a business owner, which as a MLO or an agent, you're a business owner, you have to be resourceful, right? You are a startup founder. You're an entrepreneur. Congratulations, right? You're whether a single person business, if you don't have a team, which all of us have a team, we just have to figure out how to leverage and build a relationship and ask for help, which most people don't, which is part of being resourceful, asking for help. And people fall victim to themselves because the lack of decision on I'm deciding to do this, right? You look at most agents or MLOs that have failed, they never decided to be in the business. They just kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They didn't commit. The commitment wasn't there. If the commitment was there, the success would follow, right? Be, do, have. You want to have those things? You have to do this. You do those things, you have to be that person. So who do you want to be? So you can do those things and have what that person has. What is it? It's relevant. It's relevant to your family life. It's relevant to your business. It's relevant to being a parent, all of it. And what's important to you? And what's important to you is going to decide, is 100% going to decide how you show up every day. Right? What are your priorities? It goes for health, wealth, fitness, everything.
I think that's a great way for us to wrap up, because that is the perfect statement. Like, how are you going to show up? And there's only one responsible party for that, and it's the person that you're looking at in the mirror. Because, you know, and it's just a quick one about, you know, with the NAR thing right now, with these agents, they're putting out all this content. You don't think their clients are seeing that? Who are they going to work with, right? Like, you got to recognize that every word that you say publicly is watched.
Yep.
And you're not looking inward and going, how am I coming off? How am I reflected into this world? You're just mad. And anger isn't a great emotion. So I appreciate everything, Ray, and I'm super excited to continue, you know, on and collaborating with you. I think we've got very similar mindsets, and I think every time we talk, we figure out we're even more and more similar. So I appreciate you joining us on One Man's Journey today, and looking forward to doing some stuff in the future.
Me too, man. Thank you. Appreciate what you're doing, Ryan.
Awesome. All right. We will see you on the next one. And just remember, you are not alone.